we're going to take a closer look at two major teleological arguments, William Paley's and Richard Swinburne's. We're going to dig into what they have in common, but more importantly, where they really differ. So first up, what do these arguments actually have in common? Well, both Paley and Swinburne put forward what we call empirical a posteriori arguments. Now, all that means is that they start by looking at the world, by observing certain things, and from that evidence, they reason their way to a divine designer. At their core, here's what they both share. Both Paley and Swinburne point to a specific kind of order in the universe, and they both argue that this order is just too specific, too structured, to be a product of random chance. For them, the only explanation that really makes sense is an intelligent mind that planned it.
Okay, but here's where they really start to part ways. The biggest, most fundamental difference between them is the type of order each one chooses as their main piece of evidence for design.
Paley's all about what's known as spatial order. Think about it like this. It's how different parts are physically arranged, organized together to do a job. His classic example, of course, is a watch, where all the gears and springs are put together for the purpose of telling time.
Swinburne, on the other hand, isn't looking at the arrangement of parts within an object. He's focused on temporal order. This is about the regularity of things over time, the way one event consistently follows another, all governed by these deep underlying laws of nature.
So let's put that side by side. Paley's evidence is the incredible complexity of something like the human eye. You've got all these different parts, the lens, the retina, all arranged perfectly for the purpose of seeing. Swinburne is actually less interested in that kind of biological complexity. He's asking a more fundamental question. Why does the universe follow stable, predictable laws, like gravity, in the first place?
So because they're focusing on different things, it makes sense that their methods are different too. How do they each make the leap from observing their chosen type of order to concluding there must be a divine designer?
Well, a key similarity in their method is that both of them argue that other explanations just don't work. Paley famously says a watch couldn't just assemble itself by chance. In a similar way, Swinburne argues that science, for all its power, can't explain the very laws it depends on.
Paley's method is a pretty direct inference. He says, look, anything that has parts organized for a purpose, what he calls the mark of design, must have a designer. We see this in nature, so nature must have a designer. Swinburne's method is more of an elimination game. He says there are really only two kinds of explanation, scientific and personal. And since science can't explain the most basic laws of nature, we're left with a personal explanation.
And this really gets to the heart of Swinburne's point. Science is great at explaining one event by appealing to a law of nature, or maybe explaining that law with an even more fundamental law. But he argues it hits a wall. It can't explain why those most fundamental laws are the way they are. For that, he thinks you need a totally different kind of explanation. All right, let's break down the actual step-by-step logic of each argument. So Paley's argument starts with this big premise. If something has parts organized for a purpose, it's been designed. Then he makes the observation that nature is full of things like this. The logical conclusion? Nature contains designed things. From there, he argues that design needs a designer, and that designer must be a mind separate from the universe itself. Now, Swinburne's argument has a different shape. It's what we call an argument to the best explanation. He starts by observing these temporal regularities, the laws of nature. He then argues that science can't explain where these most basic laws come from. So if you only have two options, scientific or personal explanation, and you've ruled one out, the best remaining option must be a personal one. This implies an agent or a person who can act on the whole universe. Okay, let's pull all of this together with a quick summary of those key distinctions. So the core differences boil down to four things. First, the type of order. Paley's focused on spatial order, the complexity of parts, while Swinburne looks at temporal order, the laws of nature. This leads to different key examples. The eye or a watch for Paley, the law of gravity for Swinburne. Their argument forms are also different. Paley makes a direct inference from a mark of design, whereas Swinburne argues to the best explanation. And finally, the type of explanation they propose is distinct. So if you take one thing away, it should probably be this. Both Paley and Swinburne start by observing order in the world. But Paley is really asking about what is ordered, the complex arrangement of things inside the universe. Swinburne, though, is asking a broader question. Why is there an orderly framework, these laws of nature that governs the whole universe in the first place?